Comments, suggestions, and questions you may have, and please stay with us. Our Reading the Buffalo News is coming up next.
The following program is intended for listeners who are blind, have low vision, or another print disability that makes reading, holding a book, or turning a page difficult or impossible. The content is copyrighted by the respective publishers. For more information, please visit us on the web at nfradioreading.org. And good morning. Your Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service now presents a reading of articles and features from the Buffalo News on this Victory Monday, December 22nd. And your readers today are
Ed Howard
and Ted Pajacki. And we look at the weather for this weekend. It's kind of looking like we may need to change that famous song from I'm Dreaming of a White Christmas to a Wet Christmas. It's going to be not as cold today with areas of low clouds and a snow shower in the afternoon with a high of 35. There will be periods of snow and rain tonight, accumulating 1 to 2 inches on untreated surfaces that will be slippery. The low will be 31. Tomorrow, it's going to be cloudy with a little rain with a high of 35. Wednesday, it'll be very cloudy with a high of 36. On Christmas, on Thursday, we'll have low clouds with a high of 41. Friday, showers, 43. And for the weekend, cloudy and an icy mix with highs in the 30s. The normal high and low for today are 36 and 24. The record high was 65 degrees in 1967, and the record cold was a very brisk -8 in 1983. Last year, our high was 22 and our low was 13. And yesterday around the nation, the extremes were, the high was in Falfurrias, Texas, 88 degrees, and the low was in International Falls, Minnesota, at a chilly -15 degrees.
I think we're well off right here.
I'll stay here.
Yes. Well, turning to the front page of today's Buffalo News, our first headline is Housing to be a key focus under Mayor-elect Ryan. Deputy Mayor Baines wants an end to the city's fragmented response. For Mayor-elect Sean Ryan, the next few years will have a big focus on housing. That means finding ways to bring more housing to the city in a way that is efficient and affordable. Ryan plans to emphasize filling in more of the city's vacant lots with homes, while also encouraging the renovation of homes and apartments that currently aren't habitable, said Deputy Mayor Thomas Baines. For too long, the city's response to housing challenges has been somewhat fragmented, too much demolition, too little rebuilding, and not enough coordination across agencies that can help bolster the work that we want to do in this space, Baines said. The result, unfortunately, has been thousands of vacant lots, weakened blocks in neighborhoods, missed opportunities for reinvestment, he told a gathering of commercial real estate professionals last week. With this new administration, that approach will soon change. Ryan plans to use his experience in the state Senate and programs he introduced as a state lawmaker to address those problems, Baines said. And Ryan and Baines know they will need the help of developers and landlords, as well as state lawmakers and Governor Kathy Hochul, to get it done. We have to acknowledge plainly and specifically that Buffalo is in a housing crisis, and we cannot solve this crisis without the expertise, the partnership, the investment of the real estate community, Baines said. The city will begin working to build greater partnerships with folks like Those in the Room, to rebuild partnerships with the state of New York, with the mayor-elect's deep connections, and even seeking resources from the federal level, he said. On the commercial development side, Baines acknowledged that Ryan still has to learn more about what is needed. Rising material and labor costs, combined with high interest rates, have slowed the pace of development throughout the city, including most of the ambitious projects announced by developer Doug Jamal over the past few years. To be frank, we don't have all the answers right now, right here, today, he said. but a lot of it is predicated on being creative, open, and objective to having conversations about what we plan to do. Housing is an area that Baines is deeply familiar with. A graduate of SUNY Oneonta with an MBA from the former Medaille University and a law degree from Albany Law School, he has more than a decade of experience in housing and development. He previously served as executive director of the Batavia Housing Authority and director of administration and finance for the Buffalo Urban Renewal Agency. Currently, the Deputy Erie County Commissioner for Planning and Economic Development, Baines was tapped as one of 4 new deputy mayors in Ryan's administration when the former senator takes office on January 1st. He will oversee the Office of Strategic Planning, including the Planning, Zoning, and Preservation Boards and the Department of Permits and Inspections. We've heard in the past that City Hall was difficult to penetrate to get a phone call returned, Baines said. I pledge to you today, and the administration pledges, that we will be responsive and we will be a good partner in city government, Baines said. We will prioritize clarity, coordination, and mostly accountability because uncertainty is the enemy of investment. Baines noted that Ryan also has experience with housing, having helped secure $170 million in investments while in the state Senate, aimed at stabilizing neighborhoods, expanding home ownership, and protecting affordability. But he acknowledged that they would also need more state funding first, since the cash-strapped city is dealing with a budget crisis and doesn't have extra funds. We hope to get more money. We'd like to get all the money we can to continue funding these programs, he told the Buffalo News. That's really the objective. We recognize the fiscal crisis, so we have to be all the more adamant about accessing funds from the state government and other resources to still help propel the policies while we fix the fiscal issues. The state's block-by-block program is designed to target nearly 13,000 vacant residential lots in the city, which Baines called one of our biggest structural problems because of the holes they leave in neighborhoods. In some cases, he said, there are football fields of vacancies. Funded so far with $70 million statewide over 2 years, the initiative supports small, concentrated projects to construct new single-family and double-family homes in Buffalo, Albany, Syracuse, Rochester, and Binghamton, but it can't just be one lot or one new house at a time, Baines said.
Also on today's front page, Trump's, quote, imperial presidency, end quote, is taken to a level hardly ever seen. When President Trump hosted the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia last month, he pulled out all the stops. To the traditional pomp of a formal White House visit, he added a military flyover, a procession of black horses and long, regal tables for a lavish dinner in the East Room. For surprised White House veterans, the flourishes looked familiar. Just 2 months earlier, King Charles III of Britain welcomed Trump for a state visit that included the same touches. In his first year back in office, Trump has unabashedly adopted the trappings of royalty, just as he has asserted power to transform U.S. government and society to his liking. Trump has established a new, more audacious version of the imperial presidency that goes far beyond the one even associated with Richard Nixon, for whom the term was popularized half a century ago. Trump 2.0 is Trump 2.1 unleashed. The gold trim in the Oval Office, the demolition of the East Wing to be replaced by a massive ballroom, the plastering of his name and face on government buildings and now the John F. Kennedy Center for the Performing Arts, the designation of his birthday as a free admission holiday at national parks. It all speaks to a personal aggrandizement and accumulation of power with meager resistance from Congress or the Supreme Court. Nearly 250 years after the American colonists threw off their king, this is arguably the closest the country has come during a time of general peace to the centralized authority of a monarch. Trump takes it upon himself to reinterpret a constitutional amendment and to eviscerate agencies and departments that were created by Congress. He dictates to private institutions how to run their affairs. He sends troops onto American streets and wages an unauthorized war against non-military boats in the Caribbean. He openly uses law enforcement for what his chief of staff calls score settling against enemies. He dispenses pardons to favored allies, and he equates criticism to sedition, punishable by death. Trump's reinvention of the presidency has altered the balance of power in Washington in profound ways that may endure long after he departs the scene. While other presidents pushed the limits, Trump has blown right through them and dared anyone to try to stop him. His second term in many respects represents not simply a break from presidential norms and expectations, said Matthew Dallek, a political historian at George Washington University. It's also a culmination of 75 years in which presidents have reached for more and more power. It is also a culmination of 4 years of planning between Trump's terms. The last time around, he did not understand how government worked and surrounded himself with advisors who tried to restrain his most extreme instincts. This time, he arrived with a plan and a team of like-minded loyalists. The president knew exactly what he wanted to do coming into office this time, said Jason Miller, a longtime Trump advisor. Now, the president had 4 years under his belt. He knows exactly how everything works. The question here, as he goes through a learning curve, is, will this be more imperial or imperiled? The lack of checks on Trump has given him latitude that his predecessors did not enjoy, not just in policy making, but also in profit making. While other presidential families have cashed in on the White House, none has been as successful or brazen as Trump and his clan. In the 11 months since he reclaimed the White House, the president's family has made billions of dollars, at least on paper, through business deals worldwide and cryptocurrency investments from people with a vested interest in U.S. policy. At the same time, Trump has systematically dismantled many instruments of accountability. He installed loyal partisans at the FBI and Justice Department, fired inspectors general and the special counsel, purged prosecutors and agents who participated in past investigations into his dealings, and gutted the public integrity section that probes political corruption. Congressional Republicans who eagerly looked into Hunter Biden's business ties have no interest in scrutinizing Trump's. As the year ends, there has been sign of resistance to unchecked power. A judge threw out the Trump administration's indictments against 2 of the president's adversaries, Letitia James and James Comey, and 2 grand juries refused to re-indict James. In addition to legislating release of the Epstein files, Congress passed a measure slashing Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth's travel budget by 25% if he does not turn over video of the second strike on a boat of supposed drug traffickers. If Democrats win the midterms next year, they will surely use their newfound power to push back further against Trump. Some, like Flake, predict that even the Republicans will begin to speak out after filing deadlines for possible primary challengers have passed. The legal analysts expect the Supreme Court to clip Trump's wings on tariffs and possibly on birthright citizenship. Russell Riley, a presidential historian at the University of Virginia's Miller Center, acknowledged the nation's long history of expanding presidential authority. But he added, we have an equally robust history of cramming the presidency back into its constitutional box once war or economic crises have passed. That history strongly suggests that what we are seeing today will not, in fact, endure. Is that a guarantee? I'm not smart enough to know the answer to that, he said.
You're listening to a reading of today's Buffalo News on your Niagara Frontier Radio reading service, and the time is 14 minutes past the hour, and time to turn to the editorial page. And today's editorial is headlined, Still Time to Give. You can help families in need during this season have a happier holiday. This holiday season should be a time of joy and happiness, with family and friends enjoying a hearty meal with laughter in a warm, cozy dining room and a wood fire crackling in the hearth. For so many families struggling to make ends meet, the above scenario is just a fantasy shown in the movies. It is an unattainable myth. What is real for them and so many Western New Yorkers is scarcity. There are parents who, working 2 or 3 jobs, still unable to put together that hearty meal, especially with rising grocery prices and the high cost of all goods. That Christmas meal seems thin in this all too familiar scenario, and those gifts are few and humble. Despite President Trump's insistence that the term affordability is a hoax perpetrated by Democrats, it is no hoax. Financial pain is real. There is a bright spot to all this. We can help, and there are many ways to do it, including several efforts that kick into high gear around the holidays. The News Neediest Fund is just one of those efforts centered around turning what would otherwise be a bleak time of year into one filled with happy memories of a good meal and presents under the tree. Last year's campaign raised more than $76,000 for Feed More Western New York, which provided nearly 32,200 meals to 7,300 households across Erie, Niagara, Chautauqua, and Cattaraugus counties. In addition, about 8,200 children received toys during the 2024 holiday season. News Neediest brings together partners including the United Way, Feed More Western New York, the Salvation Army, Visually Impaired Advancement, 211, Wegmans, Benderson Development, National Grid, Fisher-Price, and Toys for Tots. In total, the effort involves more than 20 nonprofit organizations. It also combines the resources of the Western New York Holiday Partnership, a collaboration of toy giveaway programs in Erie, Chautauqua, Cattaraugus, and Niagara counties. The deadline for toy donations has passed, but cash donations to buy food for families for a special meal are still being accepted. Cash donations can be made online at go.buffalonews.com/news-neediest or by mail to Feed More Western New York Foundation, 100 James E. Casey Drive, Buffalo, New York, 14206. The News Neediest Fund is a lifeline for families during this holiday season, and it is one of many efforts. Here are a few others. Catholic Charities, offering food pantries, basic assistance, and holiday support programs. They can be reached at 716-218-1400. Boxes of Love, Buffalo Dream Center, Christmas outreach with toys for children. There the number is 716-854-1001. Friends of the Night People provides meals, clothing, medical outreach, and support services for people experiencing homelessness and poverty. And again, the number here is 716-884-5375. And finally, United Way of Buffalo and Erie County, central resource for community giving and volunteer matching. Their website is uwbec.org. There are other lifelines out there, places to contact for individuals and families needing help, and countless avenues for those who want to give. Please help make this holiday season special for neighbors in need.
We turn now to another voice, And today's issue was submitted by Seth Stern, who is the Director of Advocacy at Freedom of the Press Foundation and a First Amendment lawyer. And the headline is, Police Body Camera Footage Should Be Public. Police body cameras exist to build transparency, accountability, and public trust. They cannot do this if the public cannot view their footage. Absent access, they can do more harm than good by facilitating surveillance. Disturbingly, footage of the town of Hamburg released through the Freedom of Information Law to Dan Warmus, who runs an Auditing Erie County YouTube channel, was stamped with a copyright warning insisting it cannot be shared. When Warmus pushed back, according to a recorded call he posted, a police official claimed the footage is our property. Yes, Warmus is controversial. That doesn't matter. You don't have to like him to recognize that threatening anyone over sharing public records harms everyone. New York courts made it clear that body camera footage is a public record. They reject copyright arguments in FOIL, Freedom of Information cases involving everything from tapes of news broadcasts to the government's possession of film used by public colleges. New York is not alone. Even when a private business claimed copyrights to police training materials, the Electronic Frontier Foundation secured public access in California. Hamburg's position is weaker. Copyrights require creativity. The U.S. Copyright Office says it, quote, will not register works produced by a machine or mere mechanical process without any creative input or intervention from a human author, end quote. Even if the footage were copyrightable, sharing it on YouTube for public viewing and discussion would qualify as fair use. Copyright law protects criticism and commentary. Hamburg's police department, and any others, must stop the nonsense copyright warnings. With local news outlets disappearing, we're increasingly dependent on ordinary people to monitor abuses. Although professional journalists and experienced watchdogs may laugh off these ludicrous warnings, others might not. When journalists, auditors, or anyone else encounter censorial tactics like frivolous copyright warnings, they should take it as an indication that the government is nervous. The copyright stamp says, Copyright, Town of Hamburg. Video may not be shared or reproduced in any manner. But it might as well read, keep digging, you're onto something.
Well, next we're going to turn to our editorial cartoon, and today's cartoon comes from Mike Lukovich, who is the cartoonist for the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, and it is a single panel, and towards the left side of the panel we have Santa Claus, except Santa Claus is an elephant, and I'm going to guess that this is a Republican elephant. And going to the right side of the cartoon, we see a number of kids standing there with their Christmas lists in hand, ready to go talk to the Santa elephant. However, Santa, the elephant, is holding up a box with a rocket on the front of it, and he's saying to the kids, no wish lists, everybody gets the same thing. And on the box he's holding up with a rocket on the front, it says, healthcare costs skyrocket. I think it's pretty plain what this one means.
Okay.
So,
all right, turning now to the opinion pieces from our national authors. The first one is from Clarence Page, who is from the Tribune Content Agency, and the headline is, Trump's reverse migration is an idea without a future. After an Afghan national was charged in the shooting of 2 National Guardsmen in Washington just before Thanksgiving, President Trump's administration revived his earlier calls for something that to many Americans sounded at best puzzling. It was called reverse migration, or its shortened form, re-migration. For many black Americans, reverse migration describes the widespread movement back to the South after civil rights reforms undid the Jim Crow segregation laws that spurred many, including my ancestors, to move north. In this sense, reverse migration carries a connotation of social healing. Yet, as gratified as I am by how smoothly Americans of all races have become accustomed to getting along, in ways that would have been scarcely imaginable even in my youth, I am dismayed by giant steps taken backwards being advocated for by the new Trump generation of right-wingers. Trump's embrace of reverse migration is central to the ascendancy of populist white nationalists in the Republican Party, the folks who 10 years ago we knew as the alt-right, but who now practically comprise the American right in its entirety. The concept of re-migration is well known in Europe as a light version of ethnic cleansing, the systematic and forceful removal of an ethnic, cultural, racial, or religious group from a given territory, with the goal of making that area ethnically homogeneous. In the worst circumstances, when violent and terror-inspiring means are used, ethnic cleansing is a war crime, and Europe saw plenty of this in the long, bloody 20th century. However, in the euphemistic usage of European far right, the concept of remigration implies choice on the part of the subject. But make no mistake, this is forced repatriation of immigrants. The so-called identitarian movement, an umbrella term for European populist, anti-immigrant, and white nationalist parties, has helped popularize the concept of remigration and any other effort that moves in the opposite direction from diversity in the United States. Trump began using the terms remigration and reverse migration frequently in the 2024 election campaign, and he explicitly promised to remove millions of immigrants from the United States, including some who are in the country illegally and potentially some who have legal status. Who can forget his slander against Haitian refugees living in Ohio? Trump has shown himself willing to subordinate all governing values to the desire to rid our nation of immigrants who don't look like us or pray like us. His attitude toward the program that brought Afghani refugees to the U.S., including those who served alongside our troops, all risking their lives in Afghanistan, is perhaps the clearest example. Unfortunately, the recent attack against Guard soldiers, in which one died and the other was hospitalized, only gave Trump an opportunity to frame all of the Afghans who have risked their lives and limbs for our military mission as security risks and poorly vetted. So he froze their asylum claims and ended protections like temporary protected status for Afghans. Most Americans understand and appreciate that bringing Afghani allies into the U.S. after the war was a clear and simple humanitarian duty. And most of us understand that collective punishment is unjust. But to Trump, identitarian values trump American values. To me, today's identitarian movement seems like a depressing revival of the neo-Klan or neo-Nazi white power groups that I covered in Chicago in the past decades, dating back to the 1970s. That was an era of the infamous Skokie March, a deliberately provocative parade by uniformed neo-Nazis in a heavily Jewish suburb of Chicago after they won a landmark free speech case. But these racist groups now have the President of the United States adopting their racist code words and empowering them to join federal agencies to run amok against immigrant communities. Trump vowed that his administration will permanently pause migration from all third world countries following the Guard attacks, even as he has opened the door very wide to white South Africans to emigrate. As we have seen in the immigration raid staged by agents of the U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement and the U.S. Customs and Border Protection, the process of forcibly removing immigrants from our country will be slow, inefficient, violent, and in many cases, unjust, and coincidentally, largely unpopular among Americans. And that is why it's not going to work. Immigrants, both documented and undocumented, are here for overwhelmingly economic reasons. The United States remains the land of opportunity for those who want to work and thrive. The benefits of our current immigration arrangement flow not only to immigrants, but to all of us. Immigration, hate it or love it, is a key component of our economy. Take immigrants out of the picture, and you'll have a different economy, one you may not prefer. Economic studies continue to show that making life tough for immigrants does not necessarily translate into more jobs for the rest of us. Yet, one really gets the sense that Trump's and the right wing's animus against immigrants has little to do with economics and much to do with racism. For decades, U.S. immigration policy has been far from perfect. For one thing, a status quo that involves ignoring the letter of the law undermines the norms of the nation. Experience should have taught Trump and the rest of us that populist grandstanding about immigration does nothing but make the legal issues around it more intractable. But some people seem to insist on learning the same lessons over and over again.
You're listening to a reading of today's Buffalo News on your Niagara Frontier Radio reading service, and the time now is 32 minutes past the hour. And our next column comes from Solomon Stevens, who writes for Inside Sources, and he asks, is Trump derangement syndrome real or just a childish slur? The term Trump derangement syndrome is often used by supporters of President Trump to discredit virtually any criticism of him. It's a convenient slur because it allows someone to sidestep the actual criticism of Trump by suggesting that the person making the criticism is mentally flawed. In fact, a deranged person is worse than just wrong. He is mentally incapable, in fact, dangerously so. Using this slur is a convenient way to dismiss a person rather than confront what they actually say, and as such, is completely dishonest. The slur has become so common today because it is frequently referred to by the acronym TDS, as in the phrase, your TDS is showing. Using the term Trump derangement syndrome is juvenile. Every time I hear it, I'm reminded of arguments I remember from middle school. Someone would disagree with someone else in the playground, and the response would be, well, you're stupid, or your mother wears army boots. Even in middle school, I could see that responses like this were simply avoidance. Does anyone actually have something that could be called Trump derangement syndrome? Perhaps. There are probably a few people who just hate everything about Trump and would never be able to concede that he could say or do anything positive. When Bill Clinton was president, there were a few Republicans who just couldn't stand him. And I suspect there are a few Democrats who hate Trump in the same way that those few Republicans hated Clinton. Still, there was a lot that Clinton did that was wrong, and today whether or not you support Trump, one needs to acknowledge that he is doing a lot wrong. All presidents do things that should be criticized, and all need to be called to account for their mistakes. The Trump derangement slur should be discarded, even by the staunchest Trump supporters. My advice is this: if you suspect someone is wrong about something, don't pin a label on him. Rather, challenge him to support what he's saying. Criticize the argument, not the person. But don't dismiss someone just because he says something you don't like. Republicans and Democrats alike need to learn how to substitute listening to one another and engaging in constructive argument for hurling insults at one another. They need to abandon the ad hominem fallacy, a classic logical fallacy in which someone insults a person rather than addressing the argument that they're making. These are difficult times, and the country is deeply divided. If our true goal is to make America a better place, we can all start by abandoning emotionally charged insults like Trump derangement syndrome and focusing our efforts on constructive engagement with others.
Returning to the front page, we have an interesting article about some changes in automobile penalties and tickets. The headline is, "What you need to know about new, tougher DMV penalties for traffic violations." Changes that will increase penalties for drivers in New York who speed, pass a stopped school bus, or fail to move over for an emergency vehicle are coming early next year. The Department of Motor Vehicles is updating the system that keeps track of the points that motorists earn for traffic violations. Infractions such as speeding in a construction zone will carry tougher penalties now, and motorists will face a lower threshold to potentially have their license suspended. I do think that some of the changes are important when it comes to road safety and reducing high-risk drivers, Erie County Clerk Mickey Kearns, said in an interview. Elected officials, advocates for drivers, and criminal defense lawyers say it is important for drivers to understand what is changing with the updated regulations, which have started to receive media attention in recent weeks as roads are crowded with holiday shoppers and travelers. Here is what motorists need to know. The DMV uses its driver violation point system to track, identify, and take action against high-risk drivers. Drivers accumulate points for moving violations such as speeding. Governor Hochul in 2023 proposed updating the DMV point system to reduce the number of high-risk driving incidents by taking persistently dangerous drivers off the road, according to the book from the year's State of the State address. The governor announced her interest in updating DMV points back in January of 2023. They're expected now to take effect in February. Some of the main changes will increase how many points various violations are worth. For example, driving between 1 mile per hour and 10 miles per hour over the speed limit, which is now a 3-point violation, will be worth 4 points. Failure to lead to a pedestrian will increase from 3 points to a 5-point violation. Using a cell phone while driving, now a 5-point violation, will be a 6-point violation. Passing a school bus, now 5 points, would cost a motorist 8 points. And speeding in construction zones, now subject to points on a scale tied to the driver's speed, will be 8 points under the new system, no matter what the driver's speed is. Yes, a big part of the update is assigning points to violations that don't carry any. Obstructing traffic, such as blocking an intersection, is now worth 3 points. Illegal U-turns are worth 2 points. Failure to move over for emergency vehicles will cost the driver 3 points. Racing or engaging in a speeding contest is now worth 5 points. And many alcohol and drug-related driving offenses carry other consequences, but no points currently, but will have points assigned to them in this update. So what does this mean for drivers? Observers say drivers are likely to rack up more points that put them in danger of losing their license. Most drivers, when possible, reach plea deals in court in the municipalities where the violation occurred, often reducing a moving violation to a non-moving violation that carries no points.
Well, the next headline in Washington News is, with his name in the Epstein file drop, Bill Clinton cannot escape scandal. One photo shows him on his private plane, smiling and slightly red-faced, with a young woman with blonde hair draped across the arm of his chair. In another image, he's shirtless in a hot tub with his arms behind his head, the face of a person beside him redacted in a black box. There he is, grinning next to Mick Jagger in a button-down shirt and blazer, and again swimming in a luxurious marble-tiled indoor pool alongside Ghislaine Maxwell, who helped run Jeffrey Epstein's sex trafficking operation, and smiling broadly in a silky patterned shirt, standing shoulder to shoulder with Epstein. The photos were released without context by President Trump's Justice Department and lacked information about where they were taken, when, and why. But the man in them is unmistakable: Bill Clinton, the former two-term president and one of the most recognizable symbols of the Democratic Party. Over the quarter century since he left the White House, he has painstakingly worked to overcome the scandals that marred his presidency. At 79, Clinton has been enjoying the lifestyle of an elder statesman, traveling the world to deliver speeches and eulogies, writing memoirs and political thrillers, and continuing his philanthropic work. But the Justice Department's release Friday of more than 13,000 files related to Epstein served as a powerful reminder of Clinton's long scrutinized ties to the disgraced financier, as well as some of the former president's less statement-like traits: his womanizing, reckless judgment, and impulsivity. The rise of the Me Too movement in 2017 prompted a new generation of Democrats to grapple with the accusations made by women against Clinton. The party confronted uncomfortable questions about its complicity in defending him from allegations that included groping, exposing his genitals without consent, and rape, which Clinton has denied. Now, thanks to the Republican-led Justice Department, the never-before-released images in the Epstein files will introduce yet another generation to the former president's flaws, scandals, and misconduct. Notably, the collection of documents, photographs, and files disclosed Friday included many photos of Clinton, but few mentions of Trump, himself a longtime friend of Epstein's. The DOJ said more documents would be released in the coming weeks, but the political motivations of the White House in this first drop were obvious and well-worn: distract from Trump's involvement in the scandal by pointing the finger at Clinton.
Our next article has the headline, "Guns from U.S. Fuel a Surge in Bodies in Canada." Guns waving in the air, the partygoers dancing inside a recording studio on a block in Toronto's hip Queen Street West neighborhood near a bar with craft cocktails and a boutique hotel with what a Michelin guide called a bohemian baroque aesthetic. Then, just after midnight, 3 rival gang members descend onto the alley behind the studio and began firing. The partygoers cracked the door and shot back wildly. No one was killed or injured, police said, but when the dust settled, officers recovered 16 guns tossed into trash bins that showed under a couch that each one had been smuggled into Canada. Within 2 days, we knew every single firearm that we'd seized that night was from the United States, which wasn't surprising, said Inspector Paul Krawchuk of the Toronto Police Services, adding that the guns had been trafficked from Arizona, Texas, Florida, Georgia, and North Carolina. American firearms are spilling increasingly into the country where gun control is far stricter according to government data and authorities. Smugglers are hiding them inside vehicles, but they're also loading them on drones, concealing them in boats, or stashing them in a dead drop in a library straddling the border. Many guns then fetch up to 8 times their original price on the Canadian black market. Across Canada, the homicide rate increased by 33% from 2013 to 2023, largely because of firearm killings, which jumped 89% according to the government data. Firearms have been the primary method of killing in Canada every year since 2016. Still, Canadian cities remain far safer than their American counterparts. In 2024, there were 85 homicides in Toronto, compared with 580 in Chicago, with a similar population. In 2023, Americans were nearly 8 times more likely to be killed in a gun homicide than Canadians.
Our next story is headlined Awaiting Recovery. Gaza amputees struggle to rebuild lives as the enclave faces shortages of prosthetic limbs. Sitting in her wheelchair, Haneen Al-Mabou dreams of rebuilding her family, of cradling a new baby. She dreams of walking again, but with her leg gone, her life in Gaza is on hold, she says, as she waits to go abroad for further treatment. An Israeli airstrike in July 2024 smashed her home in central Gaza as she and her family slept. All 4 of her daughters were killed, including her 5-month-old baby. Her husband was severely burned, and Al-Mabou's legs were crushed under the rubble, and doctors had to amputate her right leg above the knee. For the past year and a half, I have been unable to move around to live like others. For the past year and a half, I have been without children, she said, speaking at her parents' home. The 2-month-old ceasefire in Gaza has been slow to bring help for thousands of Palestinians who suffered amputations from Israeli bombardment over the past 2 years. The World Health Organization estimates there are 5,000 to 6,000 amputees in the war, 25% of them children. Those who lost limbs are struggling to adapt, facing with a shortage of prosthetic limbs and long delays in medical evacuations out of Gaza. The World Health Organization said a shipment of essential prosthetic supplies recently made it into Gaza. That appears to be the first significant shipment for the past 2 years. Previously, Israel had let in almost no ready-made prosthetic limbs or materials to manufacture limbs since the war began, according to Louay Abu Saif, the head of the disability program at Medical Aid for Palestinians, or MAP, and Nevin Al-Ghussein, acting director of the Artificial Limbs and Polio Center in Gaza City. The military body in charge of coordinating aid, known as COGAT, did not respond when asked how many prosthetic supplies had entered during the war or about its policies on such supplies. Al-Mabou was asleep with her baby girl in her arms when the strike hit her home in Nuseirat, she said. For several weeks while recovering in the hospital, Al-Mabou had no idea that her children were killed. She underwent multiple surgeries. Her hand still has difficulty moving. Her remaining leg remains shattered, held together with rods. She needs a bone graft and other treatments available only outside of Gaza. She was put on the list for medical evaluation 10 months ago, but still hasn't gotten permission to leave Gaza.
As part of our newspaper reading, we now present the day's death listings. If you need further information on any of these names, call us at 716-821-5555. Again, that's 716-821-5555. And we have no local notices today, but we do have 2 obituaries of note. The first one is Robert E. Mnuchin, a Goldman Sachs partner who used trading floor savvy, Wall Street connections, and a deep love of art to build a second act as one of New York's foremost gallerists and art dealers, died on Friday at his home in Bridgewater, Connecticut. He was 92. And our second one is Hans van Manen, a former dancer who rose to resident choreographer of the Netherlands' two leading ballet companies and created more than 150 avant-garde works in the dance career that spanned 8 decades, died on Wednesday in his home in Amsterdam. He was 93. If you need any further information on these names, please call us at 716-821-5555. Again, 716-821-5555.
Well, now it's time to check our royal stars with Georgia Nichols. And if today is your birthday, happy birthday. You are determined, patient, and a long-term planner. You're a self-starter who likes to prepare meticulously. This is a year of learning and teaching for you. Now, for the rest of us, the stars show what kind of a day you're going to have. 5 stars is a dynamic day, 4 stars is a positive day, and 3 stars are average. And today, everybody has 3 and 4 stars. Starting with Aries, you have a 4-star day. When talking to friends or members of groups, tread lightly because people are emotional today. Tonight, you should be friendly. For Taurus, you're also having a 4-star day today. Pull in your reins a little today because you might have strong feelings in a discussion with anyone in a position of authority. Tonight, you're noticed. For Gemini, 4-star day. Be smart and avoid heated discussions about controversial topics like religion and politics because this is the classic day for people to butt heads. Tonight, you should learn and explore. For Cancer, it's a 3-star day. You're an excellent saver and rarely casual about money. This could be why today you have strong feelings about financial matters. Tonight, you should check your finances. For Leo, also a 3-star day. Use your Leo charm and wisdom when dealing with partners and close friends today because feelings are intense and powerful. Tonight, you should cooperate. Virgo, also a 3-star day. Today, you're determined to introduce improvements to your job or the way you do something. Or perhaps this desire for improvement will extend to your health. Tonight, get organized. For Libra, a 4-star day. Romance is complicated today. A relationship might be unbelievably passionate or some kind of obsessive quality might take over if there's feelings of jealousy. But tonight you should socialize. For Scorpio, today your ruler Pluto and the moon are lined up, creating an intense focus that can be self-analytical, whether you're looking more deeply into yourself. So tonight you should cocoon at home. For Sagittarius, it's a 4-star day. Steer clear of arguments with siblings, relatives, neighbors, and any daily contacts that you encounter because you might end up with egg on your face. Tonight, you should have energetic conversations. For Capricorn, 3-star day. Your thoughts about money, cash flow, and your personal possessions are not casual today. Oh no. Tonight, check your belongings. For Aquarius, a 4-star day. Today, the moon is in your sign, lined up with Pluto, which will create intense, emotional experiences within you that might cloud your logic. But tonight, you win. And finally, for Pisces, it's a 4-star day. It's a high-energy day for you, and your involvement with others will be direct. Tonight, enjoy solitude in pleasant surroundings.
Well, after finding out now what's going to happen for us today, let's look to the past and find out what did happen on this date. In 1894, French Army officer Alfred Dreyfus was convicted of treason in a court-martial that triggered worldwide charges of anti-Semitism. Dreyfus was eventually vindicated. In 1944, during World War II's Battle of the Bulge, U.S. Brigadier General Anthony C. McAuliffe rejected a German demand for surrender, writing "nuts" as his official one-word reply. Allied forces at a heavy cost would decisively turn back the Germans' last major offensive on the Western Front in Europe. In 1984, New York City resident Bernard Goetz shot and wounded 4 young black men on a Manhattan subway alleging they were about to rob him. Getz, who was a white man, was later acquitted of attempted murder charges, but convicted for weapons possession and served 8 months in prison. In 1990, Lech Walesa took the oath of office as Poland's first popularly elected president. In 2001, Richard C. Reed, a passenger on American Airlines flight from Paris to Miami, tried to ignite explosive in his shoes, but was subdued by flight attendants and fellow passengers. Reed is serving a life sentence in prison. And finally, in 2010, President Barack Obama signed a law allowing gay, lesbian, and bisexual Americans to serve openly in the military for the first time, repealing the Don't Ask, Don't Tell policy.
And now a couple items from our political notebook. In the District of Columbia, Hassett says tariff ruling could be a problem. A Supreme Court ruling that scraps Donald Trump's tariffs and refunds the import fees collected would create a major, quote, administrative problem, unquote, the president's top economic advisor said on Sunday. We really expect the Supreme Court is going to find with us, Kevin Hassett, director of the National Economic Council, told CBS's Face the Nation. Even if the court didn't find in the Trump administration's favor, Hassett argued it would be, quote, pretty unlikely that they're going to call for widespread refunds because it would be an administrative problem to get those refunds out there. The Supreme Court is weighing a legal challenge to the tariffs Trump imposed on dozens of nations under the 1977 International Emergency Economic Powers Act. Administration officials have drawn up options for reimposing import taxes in case of adverse rulings, while publicly maintaining court defeat is unlikely. Hassett, a top contender to succeed Jerome Powell as Federal Reserve Chair, said the challenging logistics of refunding tariffs paid on goods would deter the High Court from ordering such a redistribution.
You are listening to a reading of articles from the Buffalo News for Monday, December 22nd on your Niagara Frontier radio reading service. We'll return for some more readings after this short break. Your readers today are
Ed Howard
and Ted Pajacki.
Hello, this is Marian Heatherly, Community Engagement Coordinator for your Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service, and I'd like to talk to you as another year comes to a close. We've been reflecting on what we've accomplished in 2025 and what needs to be done in the new year, and you, our listeners, are at the heart of everything. The most important message we want to share this holiday season is thank you to all of our listeners who have supported radio reading in 2025 by listening, by making a donation, by attending an event, by spreading the word about us, by connecting a new listener with us. You're incredibly important to us as we review our accomplishments of the past year and plan for the future, so we can keep our programming free for everyone who needs it and reach more people who would benefit. On behalf of the entire team at Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service, may the joys of the holiday season be with you all.
We'll continue now with our reading of articles from today's Buffalo News. Your readers are
Ted by Jackie.
And I'm Ed Howard, and we're going to turn now to the city and regional section of today's Buffalo News. And our first story is headlined, Property Near Bills' New Stadium is Starting to Sell. The first property for sale of late near the Buffalo Bills Stadium that has not been purchased by the team has closed, winnowing down a bit the sizable stock of available land around the team's new stadium in Orchard Park. The new owners have plans for a mixed-use project on the parcel, but those plans are contingent on being able to acquire more land in the neighborhood and garnering a zoning change and other approvals from the town. John Duncan and his wife, Ashley Brown, owners of a state-licensed marijuana dispensary in Blaisdell and a real estate business, purchased the property that formerly housed KK Food Mart on the corner of Southwestern Boulevard and Abbott Road, just a stone's throw away from the new stadium being built. The pair purchased the 24,000 square foot lot for $1.9 million and have reopened the convenience store at 3846 Southwestern Boulevard. The 2,500 square foot retail building, now known as The Staple, opened several months ago. It has been leased for 34 years by Kanwal Singh before he closed the shop in July of 2024. But the couple's plans for the property go far beyond just running a convenience store and parking vehicles for games and events, as the parcel has been used for many years prior. Duncan said he wants to pursue a mixed-use development project on the property, but he's waiting for the town's next steps in rezoning the area and is hoping to purchase or team up with the lot owner behind him, which would provide the space he needs to pursue any bigger plans for the area. His property is less than an acre, while the parcel behind him on Abbott Road is 7 acres. While development plans are preliminary, the purchase is significant because it is the first domino to fall in an area where approximately a dozen properties are up for sale and several more may be coming onto the market. Those property owners are looking to capitalize on the building of the new, more than $2 billion stadium across the street from the current one on Abbott Road. But buyers have largely stayed away, deterred by high listing prices for these properties, coupled with the slow pace of Orchard Park's reviewing of zoning matters close to the stadium and uncertainty over whether a new open-air stadium will bring enough events to the area to sustain new development. After paying such a premium for the lot, we've got to take advantage of every opportunity we can, said Duncan, who opened the 716 Cannabis Shop on Electric Avenue earlier this year. I believed in this community and area enough to be the high bidder for the property, he added. I grew up in Eden, and me and my wife currently live 5 minutes away from the stadium. Duncan said business has been going well so far. He's hired 6 people, and there likely will be more because the store will eventually be open 24 hours. Duncan made news earlier this year when he said someone broke into the 716 Cannabis and its walk-in vault and stole nearly $400,000 in cannabis products on October 23rd, about a month or two after the store opened. Duncan was especially disheartened because he and his wife had struggled for years with legal issues and technicalities to open their shop. Amajaris Corporation, the property owner, sold 3846 Southwestern Boulevard, listed it for sale after Singh decided to close his convenience store. The property is zoned for commercial development.
Our next article comes to us from Alan Pergament, who's the News TV reporter. The headline is Nexstar's claims feature a number of major flaws. ABC late-night host Jimmy Kimmel and advocates of free speech apparently have dodged a bullet for now. The board of directors at the EW Scripps Company, owner of WKBW Channel 7, this past week rejected a $538 million hostile takeover bid by Sinclair Broadcasting, the owner of WUTV and WNYO. If the bid had been approved, Sinclair likely needed to get past the current rule that limits the number of television stations a single company can own up to 39% of all U.S. TV households. It is the same rule that Nexstar, the owner of more than 200 stations, including WIVB Channel 4 and WNLO CW23, is asking the FCC to waive so that it can acquire Tegna, the owner of 64 stations, including WGRZ Channel 2. Let's say both deals happen, and the FCC agrees to waive the 39% rule. That would mean Sinclair and Nexstar would own the 5 broadcast stations in Buffalo. The groups have something in common that might strike fear into the hearts and minds of the fans of Kimmel, who recently signed a 1-year contract extension and free speech. Sinclair and Nexstar are the 2 broadcast companies that declined to carry Jimmy Kimmel's show immediately on their stations after ABC lifted the suspension that resulted from comments the late-night host said about the murder of conservative activist Charlie Kirk in September. Kimmel's show aired in Buffalo after its return because Channel 7, the local ABC affiliate, is owned by Scripps. The influence that Sinclair and Nexstar would have if the deals were completed and the FCC rule is waived illustrates the potential danger of broadcast companies receiving too much power. Of course, Nexstar sees things differently, as evidenced by its recent filing with the FCC advocating for the waiver of the 39% rule. I will give my take on several of these claims, and they've been edited for purposes. According to the filing, allowing Nexstar to own WIVB, WNLO, and WGRZ will enhance competition in the Buffalo DMA and thereby better serve the public interest than strict adherence to the rule. Competition will remain fierce, with 7 other full-power television stations competing against each other and against the media and technology conglomerates that increasingly challenge local television stations for viewers and advertising dollars. My take is, pardon me for pausing for laughter here after reading the words competition will remain fierce. I don't recall any instance where combining 2 competitors would lead them to become more competitive than WIVB and WGRZ have been in their battle for number 1 in Buffalo. The filing, which talks more about the types of news that we'll see, also mentions about their decision to replace the local news at WUTV with a national news program, and it demonstrates how difficult it is to sustain local journalism in this DMA, the filing claimed.
Well, our next local story is headlined Power Grid in New York is facing plenty of pressure. The state's electric grid is under pressure. A combination of aging power infrastructure, rising demand for electricity, and a need for more energy-generating resources that can be called upon quickly pose reliability risks, according to the New York Independent System Operator, which oversees the grid. The system requires additional dispatchable generation to serve forecasted increases in consumer demand, said Zach Smith, the New York Independent System Operator's Senior Vice President of System and Resource Planning. We need to refine and evolve our planning resources to better reflect this period of great change on the grid and the broader range of plausible future outcomes. The organization's comprehensive reliability plan, which looks out to 2034, identifies immediate challenges as well as those in the decade to come. The state is pushing for greater electrification and reducing reliance on fossil fuels to combat climate change. At the same time, the state is seeing rising demand for electricity, including from artificial intelligence data centers and electric vehicles, and deciding what its future energy mix should consist of in order to ensure reliability. Governor Kathy Hochul has called for creating additional 1 gigawatt of nuclear energy capacity in the state, but such a project is years away from reality. Here are three main pressures on the grid. First, aging power plants. A quarter of the state's total generating capacity is fossil fuel-based generation that's been in operation for more than 50 years. The organization says that as those generators age, they're experiencing more frequent and longer outages and potential for catastrophic end-of-life damage. Rising demand. At the same time, the state is facing a surge of new power-hungry projects that could further drive up the demand for electricity. In short, new projects are being proposed faster than new sources of electricity can be brought online. And finally, the need for more generation. As older generating facilities are retired and electricity demand rises, the system may need several thousand megawatts of new, dispatchable power generation over the next decade. Dispatchable power refers to resources that could be called on quickly when needs arise, but the New York Independent System Operator said development of new dispatchable resources, quote, is not keeping pace due to permitting challenges, supply chain constraints, and policy uncertainty.
And in city news, foundation to steer Ryan Transition Fund. The Community Foundation for Greater Buffalo will be in charge of a fund created by Mayor-elect Sean Ryan to raise money that the new mayor said will help the city pay higher salaries to senior leaders and modernize civic infrastructure while he attempts to dig Buffalo's finances out of a financial hole. Community Foundation President and CEO Betsy Constantine offered details of how the fund would operate in a letter to the Buffalo Common Council members that was shared with the Buffalo News by Ryan's team. In the letter, Constantine writes that the fund, to be called the City of Buffalo Transition and Transformation Fund, will be available to supplement salaries of leadership positions and improve efficiency through paying for studies and consulting work. To access the funds, the city will have to issue a formal request letter to the foundation board, specifying plans and costs. The Community Foundation's board will vote on whether to disperse the money. Constantine's letter said the city has long collaborated with philanthropic groups and with the private sector, pointing to East Side Avenue projects, which began in 2018. It is this long and successful history that we now establish the City of Buffalo Transition and Transformation Fund to add small but necessary capital to the public sector at a critical time, one in which scarce resources are outmatched only by shared hope and cooperation, she wrote. Brian Swankamp, one of Ryan's 4 deputy mayor appointees this week, answered Common Council members' questions on how the fund will be used and what it will pay for. Council Majority Leader Leah Halton Pope said she was concerned with the potential appearance that private donations could be used to gain favor with the mayor's office for people doing business with the city. My concern with private sector dollars is the appearance that they would have access to the administration and be able to engage in administration, she said. Swankamp and donors said donors to the fund, they currently have $800,000 in commitments, will be announced soon, and that they are working with the foundation, which is well versed in compliance with state laws around donations, to make sure that everything is run transparently. They are very compliance rigorous, making sure that it's compliant with state laws, Swankamp said. We have our attorneys who do everything to make sure that it is above board. Halton Pope, in an interview with the News, said she trusts that the Ryan administration, especially given that Ryan was an attorney before entering politics, will make sure that everything is done correctly, but wants to make sure that there is not any appearance of impropriety. Anytime we accept funds, that has to come back through the council, she said. And so, I'd like to know who in the private sector is funding it.
You're listening to a reading of today's Buffalo News on your Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service, and the time is 14 minutes past the hour, and now it's time to turn to sports on this by the skin of our teeth Victory Monday.
Yes.
It was touch and go there yesterday, but a win's a win, as Josh said. Even if it's an ugly win, a win is a win. We'll start now with Jay Skursky's column, and his headline is Limping Allen Has Trouble Keeping Offense in Stride. Exhale, Bills Mafia, he writes. The team avoided its worst-case scenario on Sunday when quarterback Josh Allen walked gingerly back to the locker room a few seconds before halftime Sunday. Any number of nightmarish thoughts ran through the heads of Bills fans everywhere. The reigning MVP came up limping at the end of a 22-yard sack with 1:09 remaining in the first half of a too-close-for-comfort game against the Cleveland Browns. He stayed in for one more play, running a quarterback sneak for a 1-yard gain before coming to the bench. Several trainers surrounded Allen, and they took the cleat off his right foot. Allen headed to the locker room before the Browns botched a field goal attempt at the end of the second quarter. A few tense minutes ensued before the team announced ahead of the second half that Allen had x-rays taken on his foot and was cleared to return to the game. Not that there was any doubt in center Connor McGovern's mind. I know him being the competitor he is. Unless he's dead, he's going to be out there, McGovern said. Obviously, we don't like when anyone on our team goes down, especially when you have your freak, number 17, go down. It's hard. I think his foot got caught in the ground. When I got back there, it looked like a giant chunk out of the ground. I don't know if he went to spin and got it stuck or what it was. The sigh of relief from Buffalo could be felt all the way across Lake Erie. Allen ultimately led the Bills to a 23-20 victory. They improved to 11-4 and stood on the doorstep of a playoff berth. A loss or tie by the Colts against the 49ers tonight will punch the Bills' ticket. Allen and the offense struggled after halftime, producing just 3 points in the win. Allen finished 12 of 19 for 130 yards. It's just find a way to win a football game, Allen said. Obviously, it wasn't the prettiest way we can win. We have some stuff to clean up, but we'll take the victory. The Bills appeared to be on their way to a comfortable win after James Cook's second rushing touchdown of the first half gave them a 20-10 lead. The defense forced a 3-and-out on Cleveland's next series, and the offense got the ball back with 1:36 remaining in the second quarter, having a chance to double-dip and put the game away. Instead, Allen took a sack and came up limping. Just tweaked my foot a little bit, Allen said. Just flamed up on me a little bit. Pain subsided, so we're good. Allen said the injury did not impact his play in the second half, but it was a slog for the offense. Allen completed just 6 of 12 passes after halftime for 44 yards, and he ran 3 times for no yards.
Now we get Lance Laskowski's views of yesterday's game. He headlines it, Hanging Tough. The Bills must take advantage of Cook's historic season. And he summarizes as Week 16, with eyes set on a 4th straight win and a playoff berth. The Bills let Cook turn up the heat in the first half before the defense comes to the rescue. He begins his article, Josh Allen should have known better. Allen, the Buffalo Bills franchise quarterback and NFL's reigning MVP, raised his arms to signal a touchdown in the first quarter Sunday, but he quickly lowered them because he thought someone might tackle James Cook. Allen's arms were lowered for only a few seconds because almost 30 yards downfield, Cook ran through safety Grant Delpit's arms to pull away for a 44-yard touchdown run against the Cleveland Browns at Huntington Bank Field. He's the best back in football, Allen declared after the Bills survived a mistake-filled second half to beat the Browns 23-20. I don't know how awards shake out, but he should be in the running for every award. Bills offensive coordinator Joe Brady also should have known better. Cook touched the ball just 5 times between halftime and the moment edge rusher Greg Rousseau sacked Browns rookie quarterback Shedeur Sanders on a 4th and 2, forcing a turnover on downs with 5:04 remaining. Unable to run the ball and unwilling to involve Cook or his fellow running backs in the passing game, Buffalo had 62 total yards in the second half and converted just 1 of its 6 third downs. The Bills had an average third down distance of more than 5 yards for the game, and Allen completed just 12 of 19 passes for 130 yards. The Browns, who are 3-12, deserve credit for their second half adjustments. After watching Cook slice through the defense, Cleveland sent more blitzes slanted toward the heavier side of Buffalo run plays. Cook had 7 rushes for 17 yards and 1 catch for 17 yards after halftime. You could see on certain run plays that he went to cut back on certain plays, and they blitzed to the place we cut back at, right guard Osiris Torrance explained. I think that slowed us down a little bit. The Bills were too slow to adjust. Allen missing open receivers didn't help, and neither did the 2 sacks he took for a loss of 35 yards. But Cook's long touchdown run illustrated why he should be the focal point of the offense in a game like this one, whether it's as a runner or as a pass catcher. Browns backup linebacker, Mohamed Diabete, was in a position to tackle Cook near the line of scrimmage, or at least he thought so. Cook cut to his left to avoid the tackle, then cut back to the right side of the field. Delpit extended his arms, desperately trying to wrangle Cook, but Cook ran through the tackle and toward the end zone as Bills wide receiver Brandon Cooks made the final block to get Cook free for the touchdown. Allen deserves MVP buzz that began last week in reaction to his exceptional plays during the Bills' come-from-behind win over the New England Patriots. He's the best quarterback and the best player in the NFL. His candidacy, however, should not overshadow Cook's impact on the Bills, not to mention Cook's case to become Offensive Player of the Year. Where would this team be without Cook? It wouldn't have come to the 5th team in NFL history to reach 11 wins for 6 consecutive seasons. It wouldn't be on the precipice of a 7th consecutive trip to the playoffs. And it probably would have lost to the Browns, a brutal reality when you consider Buffalo defense forced 2 turnovers, collected 3 sacks, and held Sanders to 157 passing yards. He's an absolute stud, Allen said of Cook. We love having him, and he makes our offense go.
Well, now we have 5 observations about the game from Jay Skursky, and the first one is Jordan Poyer stepped up. The Bills' veteran safety had a team-leading 11 tackles, 1 interception, and a half sack in what looked like a throwback performance for the 34-year-old. It was Poyer's first interception since October 2nd, 2022, and it came against a team that he spent 3+ seasons with from 2013 to 2016. Second, Shaq Thompson went out. The Bills' veteran linebacker suffered a neck injury in the first quarter when he made a hard hit on Browns tight end Harold Fannin Jr. Thompson was announced as questionable to return, but he never made it back in. With Thompson going out of the lineup, Terrell Bernard's return from an elbow injury, which kept him out for the past 3 games, was well timed. Bernard took over at middle linebacker after Thompson went out. Third point, Michael Badgley had a shaky debut. Promoted from the practice squad Saturday because of a quadriceps injury to kicker Matt Prater, Badgley had a tough stretch in the second quarter, missing an extra point after Ty Johnson's 2-yard touchdown run. Badgley's kick hit the right upright. It was his 4th missed extra point of the season, counting his time with the Colts. Fourth one, Quinshon Judkins left the game. The Browns' promising rookie running back suffered a gruesome-looking leg injury with 1:57 remaining in the second quarter. Judkins caught a pass in the right flat and was hit hard by Bills linebacker Matt Milano. The ball popped out and was initially ruled a fumble, which Bernard scooped up and returned for a touchdown, but review correctly determined that Judkins was down by contact, but the larger concern quickly became his injury. And the fifth point, it's about time to wonder about Keon Coleman. The Bills made Coleman a healthy scratch for the second time this season, on top of benching him one game for a disciplinary reason. At this point, it's fair to question whether Coleman will have a role for this team for the rest of the season or in 2026. The Bills used the number 33 overall pick on Coleman in 2024. Moving on from him after only 2 seasons would come with some risk. It would be painful to see him go elsewhere and succeed. At this point, he's clearly lost the trust of the coaching staff, not to mention his quarterback, and that can be hard to rebuild.
So much of our attention in the sports world is focused on the Bills and their run for the playoffs, but the Buffalo Sabres are also starting to make a little noise for themselves. Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen keeps things tight, and the Sabres find their game for their 6th straight win. It's been a long time since the Buffalo Sabres played the kind of mature winning hockey that we saw Sunday night in Prudential Center. They had a bad first period on the second half of a back-to-back night. Only the work of Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen in goal kept them in range. But they gathered themselves during the intermission, committed to hounding pucks all over the ice, and the results were obvious. The Sabres gave up just 15 shots on goal over the final 2 periods and got the goals they needed for a 3-1 victory over the New Jersey Devils. That's 6 wins in a row for Buffalo for the first time since December 13th through the 31st of 2022. It's the longest current winning streak in the NHL. It's 4 in a row on the road after starting the season with just 2 wins in the first 13 games away from the KeyBank Center. It's 3-0 under new general manager Jarmo Kekalainen. And with 1 game left before the Christmas break on Tuesday in Ottawa, this point can legitimately be made. The Sabres, whose record is 17-14-4, are in the playoff race. They wake up Monday just 3 points behind the tied triumvirate of Philadelphia, Boston, and New Jersey that currently shares the East 2 wild card slots. We know when we're feeling it and what kind of game we can play, said winger Peyton Krebs, whose first goal of the season was the clinching empty netter with 2:01 left. In the second period, we started doing the things right, getting pucks behind them and playing fast to our identity. Josh Norris and Zach Benson scored for the Sabres in the second period, with Benson's game winner a nifty look away on a 2-on-1 with Jack Quinn that burned Devils goalie Jake Allen. Quinn was opening up and creating a threat, Benson said. I thought maybe I could fool the goalie there. Our belief is super high. It's really high. We know the skill that we have in this room. It took 20 minutes for that skill to come through, though. Luukkonen, who was 0-4-1 this year on the road, made 11 saves in the first period, and several were top-flight chances. The best was a dive to his left to stymie Artsy Gritsnik on a 2-on-1. That's one of those periods where the game, personally for me, can go kind of 2 ways, Luukkonen said. That's a big one for me to get it going right away. Make the saves. We need them as a team. He was fantastic tonight for sure, said Coach Lindy Ruff. He kept us in there, and that's what you need from your goalie. He did a great job, made a couple of highlight reel saves, and kept them at one end and allowed us to play the second period that we played. Alex Lyon won the first 5 games in this streak, and Luukkonen had not played since the December 8th loss in Calgary. He was ready this time.
You're listening to a reading of today's Buffalo News on your Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service, and the time is 29 minutes past the hour. And now it's time to ask Eric and have him solve life's problems. And today's headline is 12-Step Sponsor Shares Too Much About Sponsee. Dear Eric, I am in a 12-step program. We have rules about anonymity and confidentiality, specifically that what is shared in a meeting stays at the meeting, and I trust that this applies to information shared between members and their sponsors outside of the meetings. In a recent meeting, my sponsor, Sally, used her sharing time to talk about another sponsee who wasn't present. She proceeded to describe in significant detail how the sponsee appeared to be completely in her old addiction. While I'm sure this behavior was disappointing and upsetting to Sally, and that she may have needed to process her feelings or vent about this, I also strongly feel that it was inappropriate to describe these details to a group of 15 people, one of whom was me, who knew exactly whom she was talking about. Perhaps she could have discussed it confidentiality with her own sponsor. She could have even characterized the person as a fellow traveler or a friend, but used the word sponsee. I have lost trust in my sponsor. I don't feel safe sharing personal information about my own failings because she may decide it's okay to tell other people about my issues. I have witnessed her engaging in gossip about ACA members in the past, but this crossed a line. I have been her sponsee since 2016. I'm trying to decide if I should tell her about my concerns, but I also know it's not my job to fix her. I welcome your insights. Signed, Overshared. Dear Overshared, I agree that Sally should have discussed this with her sponsor if for no other reason that a one-on-one conversation could have helped her to check her thinking and determine what, if anything, was appropriate for the group and what veered too close to gossip. Every person's recovery journey is unique, and you need to be able to set yourself up for success. So, if Sally's share is presenting an obstacle for the sake of your recovery, you should explore a new sponsor relationship. This may be temporary, or it might be permanent. It's up to you. When you talk to her, remember that the goal isn't to fix her or even to give her advice about her share. Speak from personal experiences. This is what I heard, and this is what I feel, and so this is what I'm going to do to address those feelings. This will help keep your concerns from blossoming into resentments or other negative feelings that could endanger your recovery. Dear Eric, my husband of 45 years is a naturalized citizen that has been targeted in the past by law enforcement because of his skin color. I am struggling with anxiety and depression, afraid that he might be a target again in today's scary environment. I've shared my feelings with several lifelong close friends. These friends haven't taken the time to check in on me since I shared this with them. I feel I've been there for them during the years as they encountered some of life's challenges, and find myself questioning whether I should continue our friendship. Do you have any advice for me? Signed, Disappointed. Dear Disappointed, not knowing what to say shouldn't stop any of us from reaching out to a friend in need, but it's possible that they've read the headlines and don't have any encouragement to offer. I don't mean to make excuses for your friends, but perhaps they feel as powerless as you do and don't know how to be best there for you, even though what you want and need is just a check-in. This might be a case where you have to be a bit more vocal and specific about the kind of support you need. It can feel counterintuitive to tell loved ones, I would like for you to call me and check on me. Some might think, shouldn't they know they should call me? Well, yes and no. We're all navigating our own complicated worlds, and sometimes our empathy or good intentions don't fully meet the mark. It's okay for you to need more than you're getting, and it'll be more useful for you to ask for what you need than to drop the friendships which would shrink your support network. Dear Eric, this is in response to Unthanked, whose daughter struggled to send thank you notes after a shower. When we would host a shower, we had everyone address an envelope for the thank you cards, and we used it for a drawing for a centerpiece for them to take home. This helped the bride and mother-to-be when it came time to write the thank you notes. Signed, Thanked. Dear Thanked, a great and popular suggestion. I especially love using the envelopes as a raffle for the shower itself.
Our next story comes to us from the California wildfires in Pacific Palisades, and it's entitled Still Standing Tall. And it's about the salvaged chimneys from the Palisades blades that will become part of a memorial. High above the Pacific Coast Highway in Malibu, California, Craig Hill stood on a concrete slab and gave a tour of a home that is no longer there. Destroyed in the January wildfires, the home Hill grew up in now exists only as a blueprint in his mind. A concrete Buddha used to gaze toward the horizon from the perch beneath a coral tree. Beneath the house was a swimming pool that Hill, a semi-professional musician and producer, and his partner, Hashi Clark, an artist, converted into a concert venue. They used to invite guests to sit in the shallow end to listen to musician friends playing in the deep end. Murky rainwater now filled the pool/auditorium. The Buddha survived, but the coral tree that shaded it was gone. Only one small piece of the house remained, a brick fireplace with its chimney, situated near the windows, with bird's eye views of the Pacific Ocean below. The fireplace was the living room's only heat source. Hill and his family would gather around it when he was young to keep warm on chilly winter nights. So, when conceptual artist Evan Curtis Charles Clerk Hall asked Hill if he wanted to be part of the Project Chimney, a planned memorial to the January fires that will be made up of chimneys salvaged from 6 destroyed homes, 5 in the Pacific Palisades and 1 Hill's home in Malibu, Hill didn't hesitate. This house was a part of me, and vice versa, Hill said. With a little left besides memories for those who lost houses in the fire, chimneys, the only architectural feature left intact in many of the homes, contain new layers of symbolism. Hall, the founding director of the Hallmark Preservation nonprofit House Museum, recently completed the painstaking relocation of the weighty structures, enlisting volunteer brick masons, structural engineers, and architectural consultants, and raising donor money for equipment and supplies. The chimneys came from homes built between 1920 and 2020, including ones designed by heavyweight mid-century architects such as Richard Nura, Eric Lloyd Wright, and Ray Kapp. Hall said he wasn't able to salvage chimneys from houses in the other fire disaster zones, such as Altadena. The chimneys for his project, some of which had to be carefully dismantled to transport safely, are in temporary storage until Hall raises enough money to complete this project, and until he secures a permanent location in the Palisades for this memorial. In its purest sense, the memorial is a ready-made work of art consisting of prefabricated components that he plans to present in a new context, but it also serves as a site of pilgrimage. Both victims of fire and those affected by it can come to reflect on the ferocity of nature, the climate resilience of the fire-resistant materials, and the power of objects to reinforce our sense of belonging. Hill's childhood home had been in his family for 55 years. He lived there as a kid and as an adult stayed at the house off and on. By the mid-1990s, he started living there on a permanent basis, making repairs as needed since then. I can tell you where every screw and nail and stud is, said Hill, who's now 65. I did the sewer and I fixed the electric, and we worked so much on the planting and landscaping. There's so much of our own vision, blood, sweat, and tears. One example, the control booth he built in the living room to record live music. Moving back inside, Hill pointed out where the fireplace used to heat the living room turned studio before it became solely an architectural element. The couple had stopped lighting fires for warmth and instead hung a long mirror over it so it reflected a panoramic stretching up the coast to Point Dumb, 13 miles away. Now, the fireplace will serve a new purpose as part of the planned memorial.
Well, in Amherst, the headline is, Pedestrian struck and killed in Amherst, driver charged with DWI and manslaughter. A pedestrian was struck and killed in Amherst on Saturday evening, with the unnamed driver later charged with driving while intoxicated by Amherst police. The crash, which killed a 70-year-old female pedestrian whom Amherst police are not yet naming, occurred on Kensington Avenue between Harlem Road and Concord Place at 6:02 p.m. The driver of the 2022 Jeep Compass involved in the crash, a 57-year-old woman, also not yet named by police, fled the scene and was later found at her Cheektowaga home where the vehicle was parked, police said. She was then charged with driving while intoxicated, leaving the scene of a fatal motor vehicle accident, and vehicular manslaughter. The pedestrian was pronounced dead at the scene of the crash, according to a news release from the Amherst Police Department. There were 14,878 crashes involving pedestrians, resulting in 289 deaths in New York State in 2024, the most recent year for which statistics are available on the State Department of Motor Vehicles website. The number of all traffic fatalities nationwide increased 20% from 2014 to 2024, although that number has come down slightly, with a decrease of 3.8% from 2023 to 2024, according to data from the Federal Department of Transportation's National Traffic Safety Administration. Over the same time period, pedestrian fatalities and vehicular crashes rose 48%, according to data from the Governor's Highway Safety Association. Police are continuing their investigation and are asking anyone in the area who witnessed the crash or may have dash cam or home security video of the crash to contact them at 716-689-1311.
We turn now to the My View story for the day, and it comes to us from Ron Gowell, who remembers a sad Christmas day from his past. And the headline is, Somber Christmas Memory Fades in Time. Recently, in my seasonal reading, I came across a delightful treasure written by Truman Capote titled A Christmas Memory. It tells of a loving friendship between that of a 7-year-old boy and an elderly woman who is a distant cousin. I could easily relate. My mom was a treasure. Many of the best moments of my life weren't just with her, but because of her. Capote's beautifully written novella brought back a Christmas memory of my own. Imagine a Christmas Eve night more than 40 years ago. Picture the living room inside a Niagara Falls home where a fire is burning in the hearth and freshly cut blue spruce tree that Dad and I struggled to put in its stand and placed just hours earlier in its designated corner. Impeccably decorated and standing tall with its colored lights, the tree shines as the main attraction. Mom has put her heart into the holiday as she has every Christmas, meticulously arranging the manger scene, utilizing her finesse in stenciling glass wax figures onto the front picture window, stringing lights around the evergreens out in front. Again, this year, she's outdone herself, having made a luscious assortment of goodies, including her famous tarts. There is the unmistakable aroma of freshly baked anise cookies emanating from the kitchen. On Christmas Eve, my family gathers for the annual viewing of the iconic White Christmas, followed by the film classic A Christmas Carol, the one with Alistair Sim portraying the miserly Scrooge. What follows is the opening of one gift each. I am crazy about a deep purple wool sweater I purchased for myself. But most notably, Mom is thrilled to death with receiving the new Engelbert Humperdinck Christmas album. To her delight, I play it for her. She's in her glory. Dad is visibly perplexed, opening a package revealing a loaded fishing tackle box. He doesn't even own a fishing rod. My older sister, Audra, is ecstatic opening her gift, a pair of VHS cassettes of her all-time favorite flick, Gone with the Wind, in which she has always pictured herself as the strong, determined, resilient, and independent Scarlett O'Hara. Christmas Day is less eventful except for the wonderful holiday feast of a delectable ham baked with cloves and pineapple and a special mince pie for Dad. The next year, Thursday, December 24th, 1981, Mom is sick. We hover around her bedside. Christmas night, she's too weak to do anything but breathe. Dad calls the ambulance. In the ER, the doctor discloses somberly to Dad, this could be it. My heart sinks. On Saturday morning, she lapsed into a coma. We are emotionally raw. Mom would leave us that Sunday morning. On Tuesday, we said our final goodbyes. Christmas Eve, 1982. Our family home is silent and in darkness. Dad and I are in Florida visiting my younger sister. I'm alone, stretched out on a park bench, deep in thought under a blazing sun. My heart still aches as I think of my mother lying in the cemetery back home, buried under a foot of snow. I came to realize over time it was a mere meaningless body in the ground, and Mom was enjoying her eternal reward. Over the next 44 years, my grief would turn to celebration of a life well lived as we hold my mother in our hearts.
Next to international news, the headline is Nation Mourns Shooting Victims. Crowd gathers at scene, moment of silence held a week after the attack. Thousands of mourners gathered Sunday evening under tight police security at Sydney's iconic Bondi Beach to mark a week since two gunmen targeting a Jewish festival killed 15 people there. Since then, Australian governments were galvanized into action to counter anti-Semitism and tighten already strict national gun controls. Prime Minister Anthony Albanese, his predecessors John Howard and Scott Morrison, and Governor-General Sam Mostyn, who represents Australia's head of state, King Charles III, were among the dignitaries at the commemoration that drew more than 10,000 people. This has to be the nadir of anti-Semitism in our country, New South Wales Jewish Board of Deputies President David Ossip told the crowd. This has to be the moment when light starts to eclipse the darkness. The crowd booed Albanese when Ossip acknowledged his presence. Opposition leader Susan Ley, who said a conservative government led by her would reverse a decision made by Albanese's center-left Labour Party government this year to recognize a Palestinian state, was cheered. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu lashed out at Albanese over the attack on the Hanukkah celebration, saying, "Your call for a Palestinian state pours fuel on the anti-Semitic fire." Netanyahu repeatedly sought to link widespread calls for a Palestinian state and criticism of Israel's military offensive in Gaza after Hamas' 2023 attack to growing incidents of anti-Semitism worldwide. Images of the victims aged 10 to 87 were projected at the commemoration. Waltzing Matilda was sung in honor of the youngest victim, whose Ukrainian parents gave their Australian-born daughter what they said was the most Australian name they knew. A widely acclaimed hero of the massacre, Ahmed El-Ahmed, sent a message of support from his hospital bed. The Syrian-born immigrant was shot after wresting a shotgun from one of the gunmen. "The Lord is close to broken-hearted. Today, I stand with you, my brothers and sisters," he wrote. His father, Mohammed Fatah El-Ahmed, was invited to light a candle on the Jewish candelabrum known as a menorah on the final night of Hanukkah. Beyond the famous beach, people around Australia united with Sydney's stricken Jewish community by lighting candles and observing 1 minute of silence at their homes at 6:47 p.m. to remember the moment the massacre, which was inspired by the Islamic State terrorist group, unfolded. The federal and New South Wales state governments declared Sunday a national day of reflection to mark Australia's first worst mass shooting since 35 were killed in the Tasmania state in 1996. Indigenous leaders held a traditional ceremony in the morning at the waterfront Bondi Pavilion, where an impromptu memorial is set to be cleared on Monday. One of the suspects, Naveed Akram, was shot by police. He was charged with 15 counts of murder and 40 counts of causing harm with intent to murder in relation to those wounded. His father, Saeed Akram, 50, was shot dead by police at the scene. The health department said 13 of those wounded at Bondi remained in Sydney hospitals on Sunday.
And some short digest notes from around the nation and the world. Trump removes almost 30 career diplomats. The Trump administration recalled almost 30 career diplomats from ambassadorial and other senior embassy posts as it moves to reshape the U.S. diplomatic posture abroad, with personnel deemed fully supportive of Donald Trump's America First priorities. The chiefs of mission in at least 29 countries were informed last week that their tenures would end in January. Two State Department officials said, on the condition of anonymity. All of them took up their posts in the Biden administration. They began to receive notices from officials in Washington about their imminent departures on Wednesday. Those affected will return to Washington for other assignments should they wish to take them, the officials said. The State Department defended the changes. Utility is being restored in much of San Francisco. Power was restored Sunday morning to almost 130,000 homes and businesses in San Francisco affected by the massive outage a day earlier that caused major disruptions in the city. The Pacific Gas and Electric Company's outage map showed more than 16,000 customers remained without power as of noon Pacific time. PG&E said earlier its crews worked to restore electricity in several neighborhoods and small areas in downtown San Francisco following Saturday's outage. It said it could not provide a precise time frame for when the power would be fully restored. In South Africa, a group of about 12 gunmen killed 9 people and wounded at least 10 others at a shooting at a South African pub early Sunday, authorities said. It was the country's second mass shooting in 3 weeks. Tariffs. The Supreme Court scraps Donald Trump's tariffs and refunds the import fees collected would create a major administrative problem, National Economic Council Director Kevin Hassett told CBS's Face the Nation on Sunday. ICE. An immigration and customs enforcement agent fired shots Sunday at a Cuban immigrant living in the U.S. illegally after the man struck the agent and another one with an SUV in Minnesota's state capital. The Department of Homeland Security said the man, who also bit an ICE agent, wasn't hurt, and the agent's injuries were not life-threatening. In Nigeria, The remaining 130 Nigerian school children who were abducted in November from a Catholic school in Niger State were released. President Bola Tinubu's spokesperson said Sunday, after one of the country's biggest mass kidnappings in recent years. And 3 men will stand trial next year after a silver steward employed at the official residence of the French president was arrested this past week for the theft of items of silverware and table service worth up to $47,000, the Paris prosecutor said.
And we'll end with this thought of the day, seeing as how Olaf Fubb is no longer
Yes.
speaking. But we have one here from Albert Einstein, and he says, "Life is like riding a bicycle. To keep your balance, you must keep moving."
I like that. You've been listening to a reading of articles and features from the Buffalo News for Monday, December 22nd. We read the Buffalo News live on weekday and Sunday mornings at 9 a.m. and rebroadcast at 4 p.m. For more information, call 716-821-5555. Your readers today have been
Ed Howard.
and Ted Pajacki. Have a great day and a wonderful Christmas.
This Thursday and Friday is Christmas and Christmas Eve. Well, Christmas Eve is Wednesday. But the offices of the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service are going to be closed on the 25th and 26th of December. So this, our program is going to be slightly different because we won't be in the office. There won't be a Buffalo News or USA Today either of those days. The rest of our programming should be pretty much the same. If there's any re-airings, it's basically due to lack of ability to get something accomplished. We're working on getting everything done. But in case this is our program, this is our programming changes. On Christmas Eve at 10 o'clock, we will be playing an old-time radio show. It's 3 hours of Christmas programs from our old-time radio vaults. And on Thursday, Christmas Day at 9 o'clock, we'll be re-airing Wednesday's Buffalo News. Though we still have a Buffalo News broadcast at least one of these two days. At noon, we'll be playing Merry Christmas. It's stories and traditions of Christmas. We'll play from noon to 2. At 4 o'clock, we have a special treat. Our good friend, Sir Patrick Stewart, Brother Christmas Carol from 4 to 6 p.m. And then at 10 o'clock on Christmas Day, we'll be playing an old-time radio special, all 6 different Christmas shows from our old-time radio vault. And Friday at 9 o'clock to 1 o'clock, we'll be playing the Guinness Book of Christmas. It's 4 hours of content. At 1 o'clock, we're playing an article from Newsweek about the birth of Jesus. At 4 o'clock, our friends at the International Association of Audio Information Services will be playing Christmas Time in History. And then at 5 o'clock on Friday, we'll be playing their Christmas Carol. Stay with us for these readings, more throughout the rest of the week. Have a nice day. The following program is intended for listeners who are blind, have